Welcome to the Nebraska Department of Education's webinar on the Nebraska Student-Centered Assessment System, or NSCAS, Summative and Alternate Accessibility Manual. It is important that anyone working with the NSCAS assessment system read through and become familiar with the document in its entirety. This webinar will focus on the Accessibility Manual Tool 2, Linguistic Supports for English Learners. Linguistic supports are those features available for students who are designated as English learners. Linguistic supports help English learners gain access to the content by minimizing language barriers. Linguistic support should be determined on an individual basis and may depend on factors such as a student's English language proficiency level and level of native language literacy. Linguistic supports can be embedded or non-embedded. Embedded linguistic supports are provided digitally as part of the test delivery system. Examples of embedded linguistic supports are text-to-speech in English and the Spanish online form. Since text-to-speech is only available in English, the Spanish online form may be read aloud verbatim by a human reader. If using this option, please refer to Tool 6, Read Aloud Guidelines, on page 43 of the manual. Otherwise, to access the Spanish audio files, a paper form is needed for the student. Embedded linguistic supports depend on the content area tested. For example, fewer supports are allowed on the English Language Arts assessment, as passages cannot be read. Please refer to the NSCAS Summative and Alternate Accessibility Manual for more specific details about these supports. Non-embedded linguistic supports are provided locally and are not available as part of the test platform. These include native language supports, such as a word-to-word bilingual dictionary, a bilingual word list, and translations. Also included are supports such as clarification of directions and paper and pencil test forms. There are detailed descriptions of all available not-embedded linguistic supports and recommendations for use in the Accessibility Manual. Keep in mind, supports can be test-specific. For example, native language translation of content and test items are allowed for math and science only. Because of the new platform and adaptive testing, all students under Universal Features are allowed flexible scheduling. For this reason, there is no need to order paper forms for a student who needs additional time. This slide lists the specific reasons that a district may need to order paper forms for English learners. First, the district intends to provide a written translation in a language other than Spanish. This is available for math and science only, as ELA passages are not allowed to be translated. Second, a student would benefit from a side-by-side assessment in English and another language, again available for math and science only. Third, a student would benefit from the audio Spanish files. As previously stated, if a student would benefit from the audio files in Spanish, the only option is for the paper forms, as the audio files are not available online. This is available for all content areas. However, only the directions are translated for the ELA test. The fourth reason a student may need a paper form is that he or she arrives shortly before testing and has had significantly limited access to technology. If you have questions about the paper pencil form, refer to page 33 of the Accessibility Manual or call the Title III or statewide assessment office at NDE for clarifications. Tool 2, Linguistic Supports for English Learners, goes into detail about how to determine appropriate supports for English learners. Decisions should be made on an individual basis and by a team, which includes someone with knowledge of language acquisition. Selecting appropriate supports should be based on characteristics such as a student's native language literacy level, current and past schooling experiences, and years in a U.S. school. In addition, a student's level of English language proficiency should be considered when making decisions about linguistic supports. The Accessibility Manual describes 3 levels of proficiency: emerging, progressing, and nearly proficient. See Tool 2 for these descriptions, as well as recommendations for students at these levels. Please note, these are only recommendations, and districts should make decisions based on an individual's needs. Recently arrived English learners, or RAELs, are students who have been enrolled in a school in one of the 50 states or the District of Columbia for less than 12 months. Under ESSA, the state must assess and report the performance of recently arrived English learners on the English Language Arts and Mathematics assessments in each year of the student's enrollment. For purposes of state accountability, in Year 1, students are included in participation calculations, but results are excluded on the English Language Arts and Math assessments in the state accountability system. In Year 2, students are included in participation calculations, and results are used in growth measures, but not achievement indicators in the state accountability system. In Year 3, students are included in all accountability calculations. Please note this is a change from previous years. For an English learner who is also served by special education, both linguistic supports as well as accommodations as listed on the IEP should be considered for testing. Refer to pages 15 and 16 in the Accessibility Manual that go into detail about making decisions for ELs with disabilities. This graphic is meant to describe the importance of determining supports and accommodations based on the language and disability-related needs of students. This is not a change from previous years. English learners with disabilities should be offered both linguistic supports and appropriate accommodations as needed. Former English learners are students who are no longer designated as English learners and have exited from the English Learner Program per Rule 15 exit procedures. They are coded as redesignated English Fluent on the state record system. These students will be identified as redesignated English Fluent for the 4-year federal monitoring period. For purposes of accountability, they will remain in the EL subgroup. It is appropriate for former English learners to receive linguistic supports if needed. These supports may include things such as a word-to-word bilingual dictionary or word list. Translated directions and assessments and paper-pencil forms, however, are not allowed for these students. Thank you for listening to this webinar about linguistic supports for English learners on the new NSCAS assessment. This webinar is meant to accompany the NSCAS Summative and Alternate Accessibility Manual. Please note that all English learners K-12 must take the state-required English proficiency assessment called the ALPA 21. This document and webinar does not address accommodations on the ALPA 21. Please refer to the ALPA 21 Accessibility and Accommodation Manual for supports and accommodations specific to the ALPA 21. Listed here are the NDE contacts who helped to put together this accessibility manual. Please refer to them for specific questions. Thanks.